Hello, happies. How are you doing? Happy Halloween almost. It's almost time for Halloween. And, I just would not have felt right letting Halloween go by without giving you at least one Singularity podcast, addressing something, scary or supernatural. I just wouldn't be able to live with myself. So, we're going to talk about some pretty interesting things today, like ghosts and electronic voice phenomena and near-death experiences and just things like that, Why? Because it's fun to think about this stuff, and because, like I said, Halloween is coming up, so consider this my gift to you for Halloween. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention, how happy I am right now because the Boston Red Sox are in the World Series and the New England Patriots are once again set to dominate. At least it seems that way right now. Let's see, the date is October 24th, 2018. And as of right now, things are looking pretty good sports-wise in New England. And while that may not mean much to you, it means a lot to me because I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, as you already know. And it wasn't like that when I was growing up, baseball was bad and football was bad and just didn't have anything going on championship-wise. But I moved to New England. It's my new adopted home, I guess. And what can I say? When it comes to sports, you just can't get any better. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about ghosts today. That's something that I think about a lot, and it's something that I don't have a whole lot of experience with or anything like that, but I do think about it a lot. And I think about it in many different ways, of course, being the weirdo that I am. But I just find that kind of stuff fascinating, And I suppose, we could talk about it like ghosts' experiences and those kinds of things, Have I ever seen a ghost or something like that? But we'll get to that in a minute. What I really want to talk about is this idea of what is a ghost? When we see a ghost, or when a person has an experience with a spirit, a ghost, what are they actually seeing? What is happening there? And I suppose if you're one of those people who doesn't believe in ghosts, I will afford you the opportunity to tune out right now, because I believe they exist. I've never personally really seen one, okay? Not like Ghostbusters or something, I don't think it's like that, where I never had an experience like that I can remember, and I think I would remember. But I have a couple theories about what I think ghosts might be. And, of course, we're talking about spirits, so there's going to be, at least from my perspective, a spiritual explanation or possibility, because nobody knows for sure, okay? But I have this thought, I guess, when I think about ghosts and what they are, they seem to be obviously in human form most of the time. Not all the time. At least from the reports and the stories and, all the eyewitness accounts and paranormal research that I've checked into and kind of observed over the years, they always appear in human form. And And it makes me kind of wonder if maybe something like this happens when people die. I believe in final judgment. I believe that there is, when our soul and our spirit depart from our flesh, that we do enter into judgment. And there is a God. And it's just like we've all been taught, okay? As hard as that is to believe, okay? Because it's hard to believe. But for a lot of people anyway. For me, it's never been hard to believe. But so I have this theory. I'm still working it out, but maybe it's like this. Once the spirit leaves the body, you're given an option, because our lives are based, at least according to my belief system, our lives are based on free will, So maybe when we die, there's a period of time prior to being judged, prior to judgment, where you can refuse to be judged. Okay, you can opt out, and that would mean that you neither go to heaven or hell. Okay, let's just, to put it in simple terms, that you go to neither heaven or hell, and maybe you're not even aware what your judgment may have been. You are not involving yourself in that process, and then you become a ghost. You become a spirit that is roaming because you were maybe afraid of judgment. And that may seem kind of silly, I guess, to some people, but I don't think that it is, because this idea of being afraid of judgment, let's just imagine for a moment, let's put our disbelief aside for a moment, right? And imagine that you are actually dying. Okay, so you are in the process of dying, and you close your eyes to this reality, and you open your eyes to another reality. Okay, and you realize that that's what is happening, and then you start to see things or experience things that you've heard other people talking about when they were describing their experience with near death or something. You see the spectral light in the tunnel, and all the things that we've heard about, right? And you would probably, to a certain degree, maybe like panic, right? You would panic a little bit because you're dying, and that's unknown and scary. And maybe once you start experiencing these things playing out in your reality, you would panic. Again, you'd get scared, and you would realize that judgment is probably not too far ahead in the future. Okay? All right? So here you are, the spirit, in the process of dying, moving through the spectral light, or moving through this tunnel or whatever, and maybe you're given the option to not face judgment right away. Okay? Could be, it could be. And maybe that's what ghosts are. I kind of think that might not be too far from accurate in my belief system. That I suppose that, if we were to believe in the premise of heaven and hell, okay, we would have to accept the idea that, there are devils and demons, and hell is a real place, and heaven is a real place. And, if there are evil spirits, then maybe there would be some that would be sent to Earth to trick people, to scare them, or allow themselves to be seen, and scare people and those kinds of things, maybe. So, maybe sometimes that's what we see when we see a ghost. is we see some kind of malevolent spirit trying to trick us into thinking that, like they're a long lost loved one or someone that we cared about or something. Maybe. I remember one time I was at a party my band had played at, actually, and there was a crowd of kids like on one side of this property in this house. They were kind of like congregating in this like little dark corner of the yard where they had a bonfire. I remember this like it was yesterday. And there was a girl in that group that I knew really well. So when the band I was playing in finished our set, I made my way around to this part of the property. I found this group of kids, and I found this girl that I knew. And they had a Ouija board out, okay? And, I don't mess with that kind of stuff. I just don't. You can think it's hokey or what, but I won't even touch them. I don't even want to look at them, But these kids were playing with this Ouija board, and this girl that I knew had recently lost her mother, okay? And I'm standing right there, man. I was standing right there when she was doing this Ouija board thing with these kids, this group of kids, and she started to communicate with what she believed to be her mother, okay? And I'll never forget it because, like I said, I was standing right there. So this girl starts testing, She starts testing this spirit, asking questions that only her mother would know the answer to. And sure enough, this thing starts picking them off, starts nailing it, everything she asks, every detail, the spirit was speaking back to her and answering her, all right? And rather than being filled with like joy and elation that she was speaking to her deceased mother, she started to cry, and I think she got a little scared, and it was all happening, like playing out in front of this whole group of people that I was part of. Like I'm standing there watching it happen, and I'll never forget it, I'll never forget it. And it kind of reminds me because I've had a couple of experiences myself with near death. Now, like when I say near death, I don't mean like I died and I went down the tunnel. I never got that far. But I've had a couple of circumstances where there was an accident and I probably should have died and I didn't, and I don't know why I didn't. Okay? Like I shouldn't be alive. There's no way. But somehow I managed to survive. And I guess I could share some of those with you here on this podcast. Like, okay, so a long time ago, when I was maybe a freshman in high school, I hung out with my cousin all the time. And he lived in a different city than I did, maybe a few cities over from where I grew up. So we spent a lot of time together growing up, and we were close friends. And on the weekends, my freshman year, we would get together at his place with all of his friends, and we would go out drinking. Okay, that was like the thing to do. Okay, this was how we passed the time. All right, so we would, load up on, a few cases of beer and just party all weekend long. Okay, and this one time, we decided to do something a little bit different. We rented a cabin for the weekend at this campsite, like way, way far away from where I live, like maybe 2 or 3 hours away from where I live. And, so we load up these 2 cars with all these dudes, okay, probably about 16 guys, okay, just crammed into these cars. And I'm one of them, okay? And you can probably imagine where this is going. But so, we got all the booze, we got all the guys. We're already, 3 sheets to the wind for the most part. At least on our way there, the party had already started. And it started to rain. Now, when I say it started to rain, it was like a torrential downpour, okay? And you could barely see, 25 feet in front of the car. Now, we were in 2 different cars, and I was in the car that was in the front, okay, like leading the group to the campground. And the tires on this car must have been bald or something, okay? Because not too long after it started to rain, this car started to hydroplane. And let me tell you, we were going for a ride, okay? And there was nothing we could do about it. And in case you don't know what hydroplaning is, it's like when the tires on your car and the water on the ground create a barrier and your car is no longer, treading on the ground. It's literally floating on water. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen sometimes. I'm sure you know what I mean. And you have no control over the car. Once you start to hydroplane, you're just at the mercy of gravity. Okay, you're going where you're going. And this car I was in was probably going about 65 or 75 miles per hour. So we start hydroplaning and we just go careening into this barrier on the side of the road. And we hit this thing going so hard, it was unbelievable. We actually split like the railing on the side of the road. We actually split it open with the car. The car bounced back and it kind of really slowly slid back to the median in the middle of the freeway. Okay. Now, the car behind us, they stopped and everybody jumps out of that car. They're like freaking out. Like they thought we were all dead or something, or we were at least going to be injured. And we weren't. Nobody got hurt, believe it or not. Okay. But what makes this story weird, okay, is that as we're kind of like getting our bearings and everybody's kind of figuring out they have 10 fingers and 10 toes still and, no head injuries or whatever, we go to the side of the road where that barrier had split open, and just beyond that railing, maybe about 10 or 20 feet out, was a sheer drop. And it was probably about 200 feet off the ground, like down to the bottom of this valley. And we came that close to going all the way through that railing and right off that cliff. We split the railing. The car miraculously kind of slid backwards and we were fine. But that was one of those times. I came like that close. Like I couldn't believe that we were all still alive. There's no reason that we shouldn't have just went right through that barrier and right off that cliff. So that's story number 1. All right. Now, another time that I almost died, or I should have died probably, and I didn't, was, I was hiking with some friends of mine down in this area right at the south end of the town I grew up. It was called the Cleveland Metro Parks. And it was also known as the Emerald Necklace. It was a very large valley, okay, that was maybe a couple 100 feet down from the main road and stuff. You had to drive down into it, but it went for miles and miles and miles across Ohio. And it was just a valley filled with trees and rivers and wildlife. And, it was a really popular hangout when I was younger. And so this one day, some friends of mine and I were hiking down in the valley, the Metro Parks, the Emerald Necklace. Where I grew up, we referred to it as the valley. Okay, so we went down into the valley. We're hiking down the valley, and in the middle of this area we were at, there's like a river, and there's all these hills that are kind of like following the river. Like if you floated down the river, you'd see nothing but these hills after hills after hills. And we were hiking along the tops of these hills, maybe about 200 feet up from the riverbed, okay? So we're walking along the tops of these things, we're talking and whatever, and we were following like a path that had been cut, a footpath at the tops of these hills, and every once in a while the top of one of these hills would kind of taper in, and the path would get very narrow. And I was walking along with my friends, and for some reason I stepped in the wrong spot, and let me tell you, I started to fall, okay? And it was like I couldn't stop it, I was going. And so I start to fall off this cliff, okay? And like I said, we're talking about a 200-foot drop probably, when it's all said and done, down to the bottom where the river was. And as I'm falling, okay, it wasn't completely sheer the whole way down. There was kind of like a runoff, and then it dropped off. So I went down this runoff, and I went right off that edge, okay? And as I'm falling, I'm like kind of like grabbing the different branches and shrubs, like as I'm falling, like they're sticking out the side of this small mountain, or large hill, whatever you want to call it. And maybe it was like roots that were sticking out and everything. I'm kind of like grabbing, break, grab, break, grab, break. Like it was like snapping these things all the way down, and until I fell right into the river. I landed on my feet, and I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I couldn't believe that I was alive, like I had actually made it to the bottom, down to the riverbed. And my friends are all at the top of this small mountain, screaming and flipping out because they thought that, I was dead. They thought I was gone. And, I yelled up, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. I mean, I had some pretty major scrapes along my legs. Like they just were torn to shreds, But other than that, I made it just fine. And I'll tell you what, I forget about that story a lot. But every once in a while, I'll get a little reminder and I'll remember. Like, oh yeah, that's right. I came that close to actually dying, So there you go. There are my two near-death experiences. Anyway, so back to this topic of ghosts. Not too long ago, I was listening to, just by happenstance, I was listening to this episode of Coast to Coast with Art Bell, and he was talking about electronic voice phenomena, EVPs. And just in case you're unfamiliar with what an EVP or electronic voice phenomena is, basically what it is like a way of taking the white noise, that's the ambient noise that's in a room or in a space, and you record on a handheld recording device. And the claim with electronic voice phenomena is that somehow disembodied spirits or whatever, they don't know for sure what it is or what's going on, will, through this white noise, the sound of this white noise, this ambient room noise, these spirits can be heard. They can articulate words and messages to people, and they can say things, right? And really quite fascinating, but man, some of that stuff is really creepy, okay? I suppose it wouldn't be creepy if you didn't believe any of it was real. But if you're not sure and you suspect that they might be real, whoa, what a strange thing to listen to, the voices of these spirits. these people that are dead, and they're talking, they're answering questions, like this person will be holding the handheld recorder in their hand and they'll shout out into the room a question, and sure enough, they'll pick up an answer. There's something in the room with them will answer. Pretty creepy stuff, when you consider that these are messages from people who are dead. They're not alive anymore. And some of them even, will express that they are aware that they are dead, that they're not alive anymore. It's very, very, very creepy. But I just love that kind of stuff. I mean, it's so fascinating to me, and it's exhilarating. It's so weird and so scary and creepy that it just captures my imagination. Interesting thing to talk about, though. I wonder if there's anyone out there listening to this that has had an experience like that, or even just a ghost experience or a supernatural experience. Fascinates me, just fascinates me. I wish, I really wish that I had the ability to interview people on the Singularity Podcast. I'm trying to work that out because, I would just love to talk to people about this kind of stuff. I could talk about it all day long, Anyway, so, with Halloween coming around, all this stuff, starts popping up in my mind. I can't help it. It's fun. It's that time of year. The smell is in the air. It's got that feeling, that autumn feeling. There's no other way to really describe it. It's just the smell in the air, the coolness of the air. In fact, just the other day, we got our first little patch of snow already. It's October. It's way early in the season for snow. But there's something about this time of year, when the leaves are turning and the weather is starting to get colder, and you have to turn the heat on, and you can smell the fireplaces, and you throw a log on the fire even, there's just something about it that's awesome, it's just such an awesome, excellent feeling. And, there's another thing I guess I want to talk about a little bit, and it's this idea of people experiencing what they call the shadow people. There's kind of like this space when you're sleeping, okay? It's in between the dream state and the waking state. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about, where you're conscious, but you're still kind of sleeping. Okay, your eyes are closed even, or whatever. And there are these people that are claiming to have these experiences when they're in this waking state, like this in-between state. And almost all of them are terrifying, okay? You're welcome to indulge and check that stuff out. Just type in shadow people and sleep paralysis. This idea that there's these people that make the claim that when they're in the waking state, their body is paralyzed because apparently, when you're sleeping, your body naturally shuts down for the night. Obviously, you're going to sleep. And so your body goes into a different kind of stage of paralysis where you stay in one place and your brain processes whatever you dream and all those things. You sleep, you rest, and you wake up out of that and the paralysis ends and you don't even notice it most of the time. But there are these people who are claiming that while their body is still in that state of sleep paralysis that happens naturally for all people, or almost all people, I guess, no sweeping generalizations here. They claim that they're being visited by these different spirits and different characters, like coming into their bedroom while they're paralyzed and they can't move. I mean, it's totally creepy, right? Well, I never doubted that kind of thing. All right. But I did have an experience that was kind of like this. Okay. And I'm not even sure I should be sharing this in this podcast, but I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it anyway. It all happened so quickly that I know that it wasn't a dream, okay? But it just was so quick. I'm not sure what happened, but I was sleeping. Okay, I'm sleeping on my back, and I woke up out of my sleep, and just as soon as I woke up out of my sleep, there was this figure crouched over the foot of my bed, like reaching over me, looming over the foot of my bed. Okay? And in a split second, okay, it was like I sat up, it saw me, it pulled back, and then bam, there was a bright light, and then the whole thing ended. Nothing was there. And it was like so fast. It was like 1, 1000, 2, 1003 done. That's how fast it was. And what I saw looming over the foot of my bed, okay, to the best of my memory, my recollection, was this thing that looked kind of like a schwa, you know, like an alien gray. Okay, it looked kind of like that, but not exactly. And it had like a skin that was kind of like a frog or a toad. It was like a brownish, orange, yellow, like those kinds of colors. And it was like spotted, much like a amphibious reptile. That's what it looked like to me. And it pulled back from me so quickly that it was like an animal. You know how an animal would retreat if you were coming at it, and it would step back. It was like that fast, you know, a reflex almost. And like I said, there was this bright white light that flashed, and it filled up my line of vision, and then the whole thing ended. Boom, like that. Now I don't know what that was, okay? And some would say you were dreaming. Okay, it could be. But I would say that with almost complete certainty that I was awake when I saw this thing. And I'm not making any claims as to whether I know what was going on, because I don't think I do. I don't think I ever will, really. So there you go. There are some creepy stories for you for Halloween. And again, I'm not making any claim as to what I think I saw or, you know, whatever, because I don't know what it was. But I know for sure that it happened. And I'm almost 100% certain that I was wide awake when this happened. But I haven't had an experience like that since. Not like that. You know, I've had weird dreams and those kinds of things, but I don't know, maybe you know what I'm talking about. I'm certainly interested in looking at the comments for this podcast, because I'm sure there are some of you who know exactly what I'm talking about and are going to share your experiences with me. But for now, I'm going to leave it off here, but I want to take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy Halloween and an even happier All Saints Day. So for now, this is Mike Bostwick from Pipe Choir Records signing off. And remember, folks, If you want to keep what you've got to give it away. Take it easy.